Lakes Cruising Club. Because the Great Lakes Cruising Club had very detailed information about spots that we wouldn't know much about otherwise. And the Great Lakes Cruising Club has a deadline for getting in logs where they like to share them with other members. So I finally did write it up a year late and did get it to them in time. And now I'm looking forward to being able to summarize what our log had in it to tell you what the experience really was. On August 18, 2021, in the middle of COVID, we left our mast and boom behind at CFB Trent Yacht Club to be trucked to Midland. Our objective was for Cattitude to be one of the first all-electric sailboats to travel 240 miles up the Trent-Severn Waterway from Trenton, Lake Ontario, to Port Severn on Georgian Bay, entirely without fossil fuels. In all, we spent 18 days aboard Cattitude on the waterway, 16 of which were travel days. Our report focuses on what we learned along the way and how we managed the unique challenges of being one of the first all-electric boats to undertake this amazing journey, with the hope that others will become more comfortable with the idea of electric propulsion. Some of you may not be familiar with the Trent-Severn Waterway, so here's a brief introduction. The historic Trent-Severn Waterway was completed in 1920 to provide a 240-mile link between Lake Ontario and Georgian Bay. It has over 40 locks, including the unique Peterborough lock, Peterborough Indian Kirkland hydraulic lift locks, and the Big Chute Marine Railway. Together with canals and dredged and flooded areas, it creates a fully navigable system for vessels with a draft of up to 5 feet and a height of not more than 20 feet to clear under the lowest fixed bridges. It's a popular recreational boating route with opportunities to visit the many towns along the way, to see the landscape change to the rocky northern shield, and to pass by thousands of cottages en route. Let me also introduce sailing vessel Cattitude. Cattitude is a shoal draft Nonsuch 26 Ultra that became fossil-free in 2016 when we replaced the diesel engine with 8 Firefly carbon foam batteries and an electric motor, and also replaced the propane system with an inverter charger and a dual induction button. The theory was that on a single charge, with the mast up, we could motor perhaps 25 miles and spend perhaps a week at anchor or some combination of motoring and anchoring, with the sailing in good winds removing the limits on distance, and light winds and becalmings reintroducing those limits. Estimates of range are quite rough when you realize that much more power per mile is consumed at higher speeds and less at lower speeds. And when you realize that wind and waves and current will all affect results. Fortunately, there are modern instruments that display there are modern instruments fortunately, there are modern instruments that display speed through the water and speed over the ground, and the amps being consumed, and the number of hours and minutes you can continue at that rate. Simply multiplying the speed over the ground by the hours remaining can provide a very good estimate of the remaining range and you can slow down to extend it or speed up if there's excess power. Unfortunately, these instruments are complex and can sometimes be incorrectly installed. Fortunately, over-optimistic readings can provide the courage to challenge the limits, and it can all work out. Now let's talk about planning and beginning the challenge. A real test for range anxiety on an all-electric fossil-free vessel is to take your mast down and start motoring upstream on a 240-mile journey through 43 locks on the Trent-Severn Waterway. Planning ahead, we'd use the port's guide to the Trent-Severn Waterway to map out all the locations that had 30 amp power available for charging our boat. We also purchased 4 150-watt solar panels, 2 of which we installed en route to the mast was removed to the Trent Yacht Club, and after we had started motoring up the waterway. Lock 6 at Frankfurt is only 7 miles upstream and has charging facilities, so getting there was easy. However, our preparatory planning indicated that the greatest challenge of the entire journey would be getting from Lock 6 at Frankfurt to Lock 13 at Campbellford, which is a distance of 25 miles with no charging facilities along the way. Now, although our theoretical range is up to 25 miles, the batteries were now 5 years old and we'd be going upstream. So speed and distance over the ground would be less than speed and distance through the water. Other factors, such as the extra weight of a fully provisioned boat, the extra drag from towing a dinghy, and the possibility of adverse winds, all added to the uncertainties. And there's a balance to be achieved between the extra power consumption of increased speed versus the time facing an adverse current. We also knew that solar panels are good at meeting standard house electrical needs on a boat, but make only minuscule contributions to propulsion. Now, anxiety is defined, and this is a quote, as a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. And these uncertainties sound like a near perfect recipe for range anxiety. As things turned out, it was not the known unknowns, like getting the 25 miles from Frankfurt to Campbellford, that were the real challenges, but rather the unknowns that occurred after thinking that we had conquered all the known challenges. Here's the story of the unknown unknowns. From Campbellford on, our trip planning provided us with a list of all the charging stations we could access along the remainder of the journey. Traffic on the waterway was very light until we approached Peterborough. And until then, we were always able to find a slip with power as expected and where needed. Young's Point is 14 miles north of Peterborough, and the port's waterway guide said there were numerous marinas and resorts there with docks with power. However, the COVID pandemic resulted in most of the owners of these boats at these locations ceasing to travel and instead using their boats in situ as cottages. The consequence was that most of the marinas got out of the transient business in 2021 and were providing services only to their seasonal resident boaters. After numerous phone calls to all the local facilities and hearing that they were closed to transients, we talked by phone with a small marina 5 miles off our route that offered to make an exception and let us dock there. While pondering whether we had enough battery power left to go 5 more miles, we saw that the gas dock at Young's Point Marina was busy fueling boats. Even though they had told us by phone that they were not taking transients, we couldn't resist pulling up to the gas dock and asking if we could charge up there for a few hours. With an abundance of luck, we had arrived just at closing time, and the manager said we could plug in at the gas dock. We ended up having dinner at their lovely restaurant and staying the night and leaving in the morning with a full charge to easily reach Buckhorn. Our next challenge was to find a marina where we could leave the boat for 3 weeks for an unexpected trip back to Toronto on August 27th. Fortunately, the Reach Harbor Marina on Lower Buckhorn Lake was willing to make an exception and provide us with a slip where we could leave the boat. They became especially helpful when they heard that we were an all-electric boat. And in fact, they had just docked another electric boat the week before. We had hoped to get as far as Lock 32 at Bobcaygeon before storing the boat, as that would be more than halfway through the waterway. But in fact, we had to go back 1 lock to the Reach Harbor Marina, which is on Lower Buckhorn Lake. On returning on September 14th, we were able to get back up through Buckhorn Lock 31 and charge there for the night, as the lock has dockage with power on the high side. But now the pressure was on to ensure that we could finish the waterway by the October 11th closing date, when the locks would close for the season. Getting from Buckhorn to Bobcaygeon, 18 miles, and from Bobcaygeon to Fenland Falls, 15 miles, was easy, with docks that had 30 amp power and nice restaurants nearby. Another 21.4 miles got us through the Kirkfield hydraulic lock, the highest point in the waterway, after which the journey would be all downhill. Then on to the very friendly Sunset Cove Marina, which had been highly rated by Charlie Ellens, who is the Great Lakes Cruising Club port captain for the Trent-Severn Waterway. We stayed there for 2 enjoyable nights to wait for favorable conditions for crossing Lake Simcoe and going through the Narrows to get to Bridgeport Marina in Aurelia, which is 22 miles. So here we are, home free, fossil free, not so fast. Our next stop, the Lauderdale Point Marina and Resort, showed us having 4 to 8 feet of water at the entrance channel and 4 to 6 feet of water at the gas dock and overnight slips. We phoned ahead to book a slip and also a table for 2 at their resort restaurant. Since it was less than 17 miles and all downhill, we thought it was a great opportunity to see how much power we can burn by maximizing our speed from time to time, from our usual 3 or 4 knots up to an extravagant 5 or 6 knots. This made for a beautiful, fun, and exciting day, and we arrived at the entrance to the marina with power to spare until funk. A sandbar running the entire width of the entrance had only 3 feet of water. And our 3-foot 9-inch draft put us hard aground. Trying to reverse off the sandbar only burned more of our now limited battery power. But people on the shore were able to help pull us off with a line that we were able to coil and feed to them. By phone, we confirmed that we would not be able to get into the Lauderdale Marina We then phoned every other marina resort facility that we could find on Sparrow Lake and McLean Bay. Many did not answer their phones at all. COVID shutdown, perhaps. And those that did said they were not open to transients under any circumstances. The answering machine for the Sulphur's Landing Marina on McLean's Bay indicated that they were open and that someone would return calls. So we left a message and headed slowly in their direction to see what we could see. The board's guide said that they had 6 feet of water at their dock, no facilities, and didn't take transients. We got within a few boat lengths of their dock, where the depth should have had 9 feet of water, and again, thunk. This time, we were stuck in really thick weeds and had to burn more of our already reduced power to get out of the weeds so that we could drop our anchor for the night in deeper water. Further phone calls located a marina 7 miles away, just past the Swift Rapid Block 43, that had a towboat and could come and get us when the lock reopened in the morning if we still needed assistance. So there we were, at anchor, minimizing power usage, settling in for the night, resigned to our failure, and ready to capitulate to the need for a fossil fuel tow. The sun was setting on our ambitions. Ring, ring, a phone call from heaven. Just then, our phone rang. It was Sulphur's Landing Marina calling back to say they thought they could move some boats in the morning to fit us in at the end of their dock. We figured that having to spend the night at anchor and the entire next day charging would be better than getting a 7-mile tow that would end our fossil-free objective. 15 minutes later, the phone rang again. Sulphur's Landing Marina called back to say that they would clear a space right away and that we could avoid the weeds motoring to the dock by lining up with their hull ramp. We pulled up the anchor and slowly, maximizing the little remaining power, we reached the dock and tied up. There was no power whatsoever on the docks. But at the shore end of the dock, there was a lamp pole with a standard 120-volt outlet. We had 2 50-foot and 1 20-foot Marina power cables support, which we ran down the dock. But this 120 feet of cable didn't reach shore until the marina produced a 100-foot standard outdoor extension. Our 3 marine cables and their 100-foot extension cord added up to 200 feet of cable. Look, you see the cable running down here. And it just barely reached the outlet at the outlet on the lamp pole. We suspected that this would blow a fuse for sure, but plugged it all together and started up the charge. To our surprise, it never blew the fuse, and in the morning we had a full charge. Our fossil-free journey was back on. The final leg was easy. From Sulphur's Landing to White's Fall Marina was a 20-mile trip through Swift Rapids, Lock 43, and the amazing Big Chute Marine Railway. Catitute's new home, the wonderful Bayport Yachting Center, is only 15 miles from White's Fall Marina. And it was found in the recommendation of the Great Lakes Cruising Club port captain for Georgian Bay, Stephen Spencer. Departing the Trent-Severn Lock 45 into the white swirling waters of the river below, we knew that we had accomplished our dream of a fossil-free journey up the Trent-Severn Waterway. We arrived safely at the Bayport Yachting Center in Midland on September 23rd. Now, I need just another minute or two to give you our conclusions and insights that took me about a year to figure out. Although the uncertainties described above sound like a near-perfect recipe for anxiety, a retrospective thought that occurred to us is that the essence of sailing involves the uncertainties of the natural action of water and, of wind and water on sails and hull. And that these uncertainties are a key part of the great attraction of regular sailing. The fundamental lesson is that having a fossil-free motor is really not much different from having a gas or diesel engine. We travel more slowly most of the time, especially when we need to conserve energy. But we benefit from lacking the noise and fumes of a fossil fuel engine. Our shorter range means we have to make charging stops more often, especially if the mast is down. And recharging batteries takes longer than filling a fuel tank. But this slower pace with more frequent stops simply means that we get to see and enjoy more of what we came for. The possibility of an electric boat running its batteries to drive is really no different from the possibility of a fossil fuel boat running out of fuel or having an engine break down, or even a failure of its starter battery. And help from other sailors or a towboat is never far away. We conclude that any stress or anxiety about being fossil-free is totally unwarranted. So this is the log that we submitted to the Great Lakes Cruising Club. And actually they have their deadline because they also have an award for the best log of the year. And indeed we got that award. It's called the Founders Award from the Great Lakes Cruising Club. So from here, first of all, I think we should have a question and answer session. People have questions having to do with our trip up the Trent-Severn or anything to do with electric propulsion. Yeah, Ron.
Were your batteries lead acid?
Yes.
Yes, at the time, in 2016, the best choice that we could make then was to put in Firefly carbon foam lead batteries, which are the third level of lead acid batteries. You start with lead acid, then you get on to gel, and then you get on to GM. And what a Firefly carbon foam battery is they cover the negative plate with carbon foam, and it gets less corrosion, and it means you can charge them up to above 80% and run them down to 20 or 10%.
Okay, we have a question from Patrick online.
Patrick, go ahead. You unmute yourself, please.
Done it once. Okay, done it a second time. Brian, I noticed early on you showed your gauges and your voltmeter was reading 49. Does that mean you had 4 12 volts in series?
Yes, in fact, we had at that time two 4 battery banks of 12-volt batteries running in parallel.
Yeah.
So it was 8 batteries in 2 banks of 4 running parallel for a 48-volt system. So being charged up to 48 or 52 is quite common.
Oh, okay.
Any other comments or questions from here or online? Jim?
I recall that in the mid-1800s, the first outboards were electric. I think that's correct, because I once saw a video of that. It was just a comment. And would you do the trip again? That's my question.
I don't know about the battery system way back in the early time. It's an interesting thought to go and look into that. As to whether we would do the trip again, I would love to have the opportunity. But in the meantime, the North Channel and the 30,000 islands are said to be the best freshwater cruising in the world, and we're absolutely loving getting time up there. The first summer, we only had very limited time to travel because we had so many visitors, and we kept going up and down on short trips, Beausoleil Island and back. Furthest we got was Go Home Bay the first year. Last summer, indeed, we got up to the North Channel for the first time. And we could easily spend the next 5 or 10 years cruising in that area. It's just so wonderful.
I have a question. Did you figure out what the cost was of converting from gasoline to the fossil fuel to electric?
Yeah, I guess the battery system, we in fact got 10 of the carbon foam batteries, keeping another bank of 2 for house use. So that in those days was probably $5,000. Today you can get a very good set of lithium ion batteries for less than that, for 4,000 or so. Replacing the engine, the diesel engine, which in West be 18 horsepower, with a motor and gear reduction box and its control system, which was purchased from Thunderstruck Electric, which is in Washington State or California, American company. I think that was a couple of $1,000. And we did the installation mainly ourselves with the support of friends, other people who have electric boats, and an old electrician friend of mine, electrical engineer. So that reduced the cost. So it only cost us maybe $6,000. And I've got a very clear message to pass on for anyone thinking about putting an electric system in to replace their diesel. It will probably be cheaper than replacing or extensive repair of the diesel. But I would strongly recommend that people do not add systems where the engine was, but instead look at these fixed pod systems, which is something that comes from companies like Torpedo. And what it is the propeller blade and the motor are both mounted below water level. Like the base of a Torpedo motor, and it's mounted on the bottom of your boat. All that comes up into the boat is the 2 wires that then go and join onto your battery bank control system. And it would avoid noise. That is a big problem with systems going out of alignment. And also, it has much less friction, so you get much better mileage. As to the batteries, we indeed replaced these batteries a year ago, and we now have a bank of lithium iron batteries. We replaced about 500 pounds of carbon foam lead acid batteries with 200 pounds of lithium iron. And we now have 280 kilowatt hours instead of 220 kilowatt hours. So our range is now up about 300 miles running on batteries alone.
Okay, I'm just trying to think of the space. You pull out a diesel engine, and does that space become available for the batteries, or what?
Especially if you're getting the lithium iron batteries, you're going to be using an awful lot less space. The battery bank now takes up about the space that the diesel fuel tank would have taken. And I did pull that tank out, but the batteries are mounted in the center of the boat just for weight distribution. You end up with an awful lot more room in the engine room. And all you would have would be the bank of batteries that is about 2.5 feet by 18 inches by 18 inches. And that's it for the propulsion power And also to meet all the house needs, I now have a step down transformer that steps down from the 48-volt system to the 12-volt system. So I don't need house batteries as a second bank. I do indeed keep one just as a backup. In case we needed it, we still have our VHF radio if the other systems totally failed.
So what you're saying is that you are a resource of information if anybody wants to join us. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Ron?
So it sounds to me like this trip was in some ways a proof of concept and a demonstration of principle, right? Not to use any fossil fuels en route. Obviously, you added to that challenge by not having a sail. But what would have been cheating? Would it have been cheating to have a small gas generator on board that you could start up just to charge your batteries enough to get you off a sandbar, or would it be cheating to get, you know, a power boat to tow you, or would it be okay if it was an electric power boat, or have a Tesla pull you along?
Yay to electric boats towing us, yay to Teslas towing us. We wanted to do it entirely fossil free, and that meant we were trying to stay as far away from that as we could. Now, to be perfectly honest, in the trunk of our Tesla, sitting at my sister's house in Trenton, there was a gasoline outboard motor that would have been available had we needed it. And in addition, there was a Honda generator that was sitting in the trunk of the car. If we had a real problem, we would have got ourselves back to Trenton and driven up and had those available. But one thing you should also mention, you may have noticed from the picture, we have a dinghy tow system, and the dinghy, it has a torpedo motor, and that is a backup system as well. With the dinghy tow system, if you drop the dinghy, you put the arms down, you don't have to disconnect it. You can just fire up the motor. And we've used that a couple of times in our years together cruising as a towing system for the boat. So it will work, but it would not get the boat 7 miles that we needed. It was either get it working there, or we had to call the towboat at that stage. Yeah, there's a question over here.
The question is it really fossil free when a lot of the power in the grid comes from natural gas and other stuff?
Curious, you should ask that. Kathy and I happen to be 1/4 owners of an 800 kilowatt wind turbine that got FIT contract number 2. And it's located in Zurich, Ontario. So we feel that we've supplied enough energy to the grid to cover both the Tesla and the boat.
Okay, I have to ask Kathy about anxiety. How did, there's a term I know related to electric motors and anxiety, but how were your anxiety levels on the trip through this experiment, if you will?
Well, I was interested in seeing how it would work, and it.
You guys are
Really
Oh,
close.
okay. Yeah, I don't think I really had any anxiety. Going through the Trent-Severn, there was civilization all over. There was help all over. It was more a challenge to see if it would work or not, and it was. In the biggest challenge was after we grounded in at the Lauderdale Marina, and so really worrying about what could we do, and, realize that there were sort of lots of options. We had lots of time. We're a sailboat, and Yeah, so we've sort of continued on with this now, exploring the North Channel. Where there aren't very many marinas or charging places around, and it's all working out very well, and we could sail fine.
Thank you. Does anybody know what that term is? Range, and you told me that was range anxiety, so that's certainly a case with electric cars right now. You certainly had some of that on your trip. Are there any other comments or questions? Sure.
Just like to comment, and I think how lucky we are, because we have more lakes in Ontario than anywhere in the world. And how fortunate we are.
I would second that, absolutely. As we see what's going on in the world and what we can do here, we're very, very fortunate. Last comment, Jim.
Did you have any experience with the multi-ownership of all the marinas up there around Georgian Bay, that they're all maple leaf marinas, that they own like 20 of them last count?
Indeed, the marina we're staying at is called Bayport Yachting Center. It's one of the largest marinas in the Midland area, and indeed it is one of the Maple Association of marinas. The last count I heard was that they only had 7, but maybe that was in this region. And there's a really good thing about it. They give us reciprocal rights to go to any of the other 7 marinas. And we can stay, I think it's up to 5 nights in the year at each of them. They also have an association with a couple of restaurants. And if you are in the Midland area, one of their restaurants is in town called the Maple Pub.
Yes.
The other one is at the Wye River area, at the Wye Heritage Marina. And it's one of our favorite restaurants, much better than the main one in downtown Midland where the ferry on, which is nowhere near as good a restaurant.
That's where I had my vote.
Oh, okay.
Well, Brian and Kathy, I would like to give you a small token of our appreciation for speaking to us today. I'm certainly you piqued the interest of a lot of people in looking at the electric. And I wasn't kidding. I think you are a resource now for anybody who might be considering it. Please give Brian and Kathy warm thank you from someone.
Following on Diane's comment, anytime people have questions about electric, it's just like being a voter generally. Voters are always willing to help voters, while electric voters are always willing to help people electrify.
Thank you, Brian.
Can you get their email put on the website somehow?
I wouldn't recommend that. But that's up to you.
My name will be on the website, Brian Monrad. My email is brian@monrad.com. I am master of my own domain, as they say, except I said that to someone the other day and they said, "You mean you're not married?" Oh, maybe I'm not.
Okay. Are you saying you have your own website? Is that what you're saying?
I have the domain name.
And your website is?
No, we don't.
No, we don't keep a website. We could
Oh.
put one on that, but we
Okay,
we don't.
you have a domain name, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
We're not even on Facebook. So
Yeah.
email is great.
But I presume if somebody wanted to contact you, they could contact me and I would,
And by phone or
Or by
email is great anytime.
okay. Okay, we can say that on the website, but we can't, I don't want to put your.
Please, yeah.
I just have,
Yes, of course.
not only do we have, not only do we have an electric boat, I think it's mentioned, we also have an electric car. So we can also provide advice about traveling around. With an electric car, we did a 6-week trip from Toronto to Houston to the west coast of the US up to Vancouver and area and across Canada. And we know we're charging. We don't worry about it.
Thank you. I think you both have just contributed to our carbon footprint, reducing it, that is, so thank you for that. And upcoming next week, we have Ray Peacock, and he is going